Harrison's here for the first three.
It being 6 o'clock, I'll call to order this January 6, 2025 meeting of the Chelmsford Select Board. If you would join me in a pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I want to remind everybody that Chelmsford Telemedia is broadcasting this meeting live and also recording it for later viewing by the public. And also to note that Select Board member Pat Maloney is joining us by Zoom tonight. So with that, we'll start with public service announcements.
Good
Harrison?
evening, members of the board. Happy New Year. I'm here for 3 public service announcements tonight. First, regarding dog licensing. Dog licensing is open for the 2025 licensing year. Over 1,800 dogs have been licensed so far, but that leaves about 2,500 left to license for the year. It's important that if you have not licensed your dog, that you do so by February 28th, 2025 to avoid late fees. The fee is $15 if the dog is spayed or neutered, and $20 if unaltered. You can license online, in person, or by mail. Proof of current rabies vaccination is required at the time of licensure. Next, regarding the census, the annual town census is going out this week. Responding to the town census maintains your voter status, helps the town maintain accurate voter rolls, provides proof of residency, and helps us better provide services to you. Included in the census envelope this year is a vote-by-mail application form. You can return that application form to apply for vote-by-mail for the local election this year. When you receive the census form, if everything does look accurate, you can respond at the link provided on the form. If you need to make any changes, you can return it by mail, by drop box at the front of town offices, or in our office. Last, regarding running for office, nomination papers are available as of today for all local offices. The last day to obtain nomination papers will be February 6th, 2025. The last day to file completed nomination papers with the Board of Registrars is February 11th, 2025. There will be 15 townwide office seats on the ballot and 68 town meeting representative seats on the 2025 ballot as of today. Thank you, and have a great rest of your night.
Thank you.
We have an announcement here from the Department of Environmental Protection regarding their comment period, which is open for Newport Aggregates LLC for their draft air quality permit. Comments on the proposed decision must be submitted in writing by January 10th, 2025. And comments may be submitted via the public access portal or electronic mail to edward.braczyk@mass.gov or via mail to their address at the Northeast Regional Office, 150 Presidential Way, Woburn, Mass. 01801. We have an announcement regarding a Declutter Your Life info session. Join us at our information session about our 15-week in-person Buried in Treasures workshop. It is being held on January 7th from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. at the Chelmsford Town Hall. Registration is not required. If you have any questions, you can contact Taryn Angel at 978-250-5241. Also presented by the Chelmsford Health Department, we have a free youth mental health first aid training. It is being held January 7th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Chelmsford Town Hall in the fire training room. It's for parents, educators, or any interested community members. To register for questions, you can contact Taryn Angel again at 978-250-5241. The Open Space and Recreation Plan invites the public to join the public forum for Chelmsford's Open Space and Recreation Plan on Thursday, January 9th, 2025 from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. via Zoom. To register, you can click on the QR link that's included in the packet for tonight's meeting. And from the Board of Health, we have CPR training that's being held January 13th on Monday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Chelmsford Town Hall. The cost of the training is $20 per person. It's for Chelmsford residents only, and participants who complete the 4-hour training will obtain an American Heart Association Heart Saver CPR AED First Aid Certificate that is valid for 2 years. For questions, you can call the Chelmsford Health Department at 978-250-5241. And lastly, we have another announcement from the Chelmsford Health Department regarding their depression and anxiety support group. If you or someone you know is struggling with depression or anxiety, you can call for more information at 978-250-5241 or email mcameron@chelmsfordma.gov. And this is held every fourth Tuesday of the month from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts in the Cabaret Room.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're at the public input part of our meeting. Is there anyone here who would like to address the board on any topic this evening? Okay, anybody on Zoom? All right, very good. We'll go right to committee vacancies then.
The following committees have vacancies as of January 6, 2025. The CCA Town Hall Advisory Committee, the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee, the Commission on Disabilities, the Council on Aging Board, the Conservation Commission, the Cultural Council, the Historic District Commission, the Holiday Decorating Committee, the Parade Committee, the Public Records Advisory Committee, and the Recycling Committee. If you are interested in serving on a town board or committee, please complete an online application available on the town website, or you can call the town manager's office for more information at 978-250-5202.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a couple public hearings this evening. First one is for Tequilas Restaurant. Is there anybody here for Tequilas?
I'm here, but my attorney's in Zoom.
Oh, okay.
Is he
Not yet.
no?
Not yet. He hasn't arrived.
Okay,
You on the phone real quick? And
Yeah.
okay, but we'll move along with other things and come
Okay,
back
let
to
me
it.
get back.
Okay. All right, we also have an all-alcoholic beverage license for Prime 41 at 41 Central Square. Anybody here for that?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Ali Zosharafatain from Prime Central LLC, DBA Prime 41.
We've waited a long time to see you here.
So we have to. Thank you. I'm the owner and operator of Fishbones Restaurant located at 34 Central Square since its inception 19 years ago and back in 2006. I'm here to discuss our application for a new liquor license for new concept restaurant Prime 41 located next to Fishbones Restaurant at 41 Central Square in Oddfellows Hall. Prime 41 is a new steakhouse in the historic Oddfellows building, offering a unique dining experience focused on high-quality meals and exceptional service. Our target market includes our local residents and visitors seeking a premium dining experience. Our menu will feature a variety of prime beef, poultry, and other expertly prepared dishes. We also offer a vast curated wine list along with craft cocktails to complement our meals. Prime 41 will create job opportunities for local residents, contribute to the economic growth of Chelmsford, and support current businesses, including Fishbones in the downtown area. As we have in the past 19 years at Fishbones, we plan to participate in community events and fundraisers, reinforcing our commitment to being a positive force in the community. We strictly adhere to local laws and regulations concerning about alcohol service as we have at Fishbones. Our staff will undergo training for intervention procedures, a certification program known as TIPS, to ensure responsible alcohol service and compliance with ID checking practices. We have received numerous supports from local residents, businesses, and community organizations, demonstrating that Prime 41 has the backing of the community. And in the closing, Prime 41 is committed to being a responsible and positive contributor to the Chelmsford community. Thank you for your consideration and for this application.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody on the board have any questions about this application?
When are you opening?
Third, we are in process of getting our contractors in order. We are hoping for end of summer of 2025.
And Paul, did you receive the receipts for the abutter notices?
Any other questions from the board?
Can I ask a question on the state ABCC thing? The occupancy number is 147. Is that supposed to be different than the capacity? Like, does that account for employees?
Yes, the
or-
occupancy is included the staff and the people standing. So it is calculated on the permit set.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, there was one form where the capacity was, it was at 135.
Yeah,
which
that
is-
was my mistake, actually.
Okay, but it is 130 that.
I tried to get that through Evan, but it didn't work.
We'll blame Evan for that. Okay. Any other questions from the board?
No.
Okay, this being a public hearing, is there anybody here that would like to make any comments for or against this application? Apparently not.
Nobody on Zoom.
Okay, nobody on Zoom. Okay, can we have a motion then?
I'll make a motion to
Close
approve.
the public hearing.
Closed.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Thank you.
I'll second. Oh, sorry.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, so we have to do a roll call vote. Pat?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so now we'll have your other motion.
We good?
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the all alcoholic beverages restaurant license for Prime Central LLC, Prime 41 at 41 Central Square, as presented.
Aye. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, do a roll call vote. Pat?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Unanimous.
you very much.
Congratulations, and we'll be looking forward for the
Right,
opening.
looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the other,
We'll have to come back. He's still,
okay.
still nobody on Zoom yet.
All right, we have a one-day beer and wine license for the Chelmsford Public Library. Is Jeff?
Jeff's on the Zoom. Yep. Good evening.
Hi there, everyone.
Okay, you want to tell us a
Okay.
little bit about your event?
Sure, yeah. This is the Chelmsford Art Society who's here with us again. They are actually doing a closing reception for their show. So I was just here last month for their opening, but they've got a local artist, Michael S. Vieira, who's going to do a workshop talking about his painting, talking about his relationship with Chelmsford and Lowell. He does painting of like local buildings and landscapes and stuff like that. And they're expecting maybe another like 20 or 30 people to this, and just like to have a couple of bottles of wine to welcome the guests.
Okay, are there any questions for this applicant?
No.
Okay, we'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the one-day beer and wine license for the Chelmsford Public Library at 25 Boston Road for January 11th, 2025, as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Pat?
Aye.
George? Aaron?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay, Jeff, you're all set. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Have a good night.
Okay, still not there?
Still not there?
All right, so we'll go to reports and presentations, and first up is Northern Middlesex Council of Governments. Jenny? Jenny and Kelly.
All right, good evening. Great to see all of you, members of the board and Manager Cohen and those participating in the public. I'm Jenny Reid. I'm the Executive Director at Nim Cog.
And I'm Kelly Leinema, Deputy Director at Nim Cog. Nice to see you.
And this is sort of our annual presentation to you, and also just update and see if there's any questions that you have about Nim Cog's work. I submitted to you our 2024 annual report, which actually looks kind of far backwards. So it's actually, it might feel a little bit out of date, but that is what I put to you because I wanted to kind of review where we've been, and then also Kelly will talk about sort of some of our upcoming work and some of our highlights, and then we can talk about what's on the horizon, sort of our next steps. And also, if we have some time, maybe get a sense of any of your priorities that NIMCOG should know about that we might not already know about. So just for those participating, Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, or Nim Cog, as I keep on referring to it, we are the regional planning agency. We're one of 13 regional planning agencies in Massachusetts. We're based in Lowell. We serve Greater Lowell, and that obviously includes Chelmsford. We have been an agency in existence since 1963 and have been successfully working towards local planning initiatives as well as many different regional planning initiatives in that time. And for regional plans, we work on everything from housing, economic development, a lot of transportation planning initiatives, as you likely know, environmental planning, climate resiliency, GIS and data services, as well as regional coordination and collaboration. So over many years have served the town of Chelmsford and the region to that effect. We have a staff of about 15 people, some vacancies right now. We're hiring, in fact, for 2 regional planner type positions. One person who will be a regional housing coordinator who will, including Chelmsford, will serve our towns and our city of Lowell to help to make sure that we maintain our affordable housing and that we're also working together in coordination on our affordable housing inventories. And we're also in the midst of hiring a regional energy manager. That individual will be working for 2 of Nim Cog's communities and 2 communities outside of Nim Cog. We're also planning to hire a couple of new transportation planners for a number of different initiatives. But even with that said, we have actively been doing a number of different projects over the past couple of years for the town. And we are very well represented by your chair, Pat Wojcik, on the council as the select board representative, Anita Tonini from the planning board, and Douglas Bruce, who serves as your alternate. In this past year, the year that I reported on in here, the assessment has gone up since that time. Every single one of our member communities pays an assessment as part of your participation in the Nim Cog region. And so your current assessment for the next fiscal year, 2026, is to be $14,681.26. This is based on a per capita number of individuals in the community based on the last decennial census. As I mentioned, we devote a large share of our staff time towards transportation planning, mostly due in part because we are the lead staff and coordinators of the Northern Middlesex Metropolitan Planning Organization, or the MPO. Pat Wojcik is the representative from Nim Cog's council who serves on the MPO, as well as other members and representatives from the state, as well as across the region. And as part of our $1.1 million grant that we received through the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, we do a number of different transportation traffic studies and analyses, as well as housing, economic development, land use, and other types of initiatives. These are all, some of them benefit the town, perhaps indirectly, but then there's a lot of things that actually are direct benefit to the town, including doing transportation traffic counts so that we better understand traffic situations or congestion areas, and then find ways to proactively address that through our transportation improvement program. Chelmsford has pretty actively been engaged in putting forward TIP projects over many years, and also working with Nim Cog to monitor specific areas across town, including Ledge Road, as you're familiar with, and other locations as well, including 16 other locations. We've also in the past assisted with the Vinyl Square Safety Project and intend to continue to help the town move that forward, as well as potentially assist with the Center Village Master Planning Project that you've done in the past and that you're going to be continuing to carry forward in the future. Additionally, we helped the town over the past couple of years with the compliance with the MBTA Communities Law, and will continue to assist the town should you request it for any implementation around the law moving forward. As you mentioned in your announcements, you're having a wonderful meeting on Thursday evening for the Open Space and Recreation Plan. Nim Cog staff have been actively helping to work with the town, and some excellent staff and volunteer participation throughout that planning process. And so we're excited to be able to work through the public hearing, but also a couple of different meetings that are coming up, including coming to your board eventually at the end of this month. For hopeful endorsement and adoption, so that we will then be able to give you a fully adopted open space and recreation plan. We've also been working on assisting you with energy planning assistance through the Green Communities program. That includes everything from looking at various capital projects in town where you might benefit from energy efficiencies, to helping you remain compliant with your municipal energy insight reporting to the state on compliance with energy efficiency initiatives. And then 2 more things. We, with members from staff primarily, participate in the Northern Middlesex Stormwater Collaborative. This is a collaborative of communities across our region, as well as about 4 other communities from the surrounding area, who participate on a monthly basis to learn more about how to be and remain compliant with the MS4 permit process. And moving forward, we were just awarded a watershed study grant, which will also be a benefit to the Stormwater Collaborative. And the last item is that we are in the midst of updating our comprehensive economic development strategy. And for that, it is aimed to be beneficial to local economic development efforts, everything from businesses that are looking to expand, or that you're looking to retain or attract new businesses into the community, as well as ways to leverage your proximity to transportation resources and leverage mixed use or housing and economic development opportunities in the future. So there's a lot to come with that process, which Kelly is going to talk a little bit about. And I'll be back after Kelly tells you about some of our upcoming work and highlights to kind of wrap it up and see if there's any other priorities that I might have missed. Thank you.
So Jenny mentioned that a lot of our work is regarding transportation, so I'll start with that. We are very excited to be beginning a regional bicycle and pedestrian plan, and so this is a plan across the region, not just for trails, but to look at how we can expand our trail networks and connect them with, fill in gaps in our sidewalk networks, look at ways that we can expand our bicycle network so that we can encourage other forms of transportation and recreation across the region. So this is going to be starting out soon. Also, from a transportation standpoint, we have recently completed the first comprehensive inventory of LRTA bus stops, and the work will be presented to our MPO or to the Metropolitan Planning Organization in January, at which point we'll be transitioning to a jobs accessibility analysis. And this work will help us understand where the LRTA is appropriately serving and connecting residents with employment opportunities, and where maybe frequency or routes need to be changed or updated. And we can inform those recommendations by looking at how well people are connected to transit across the region. The 2025 traffic counting season, we have had multiple conversations with Manager Cohen and your DPW staff and engineering staff to ensure that we're continuing to collect counts at Ledge Road so that we can continue to monitor the truck counts there, and then also conducting counts across the region. From another standpoint, this says, Jenny mentioned the update to the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. We'll be holding a regional summit probably sometime in March, and so this will be an excellent opportunity to think about what is our vision for the region as far as economic development is concerned. We will also be starting off phase 2 of At Home in Greater Lowell, which is our regional housing strategy. And this is looking at how we can allocate housing and different types of housing equitably across the region to ensure that people have access to both rental and home ownership opportunities, and that we are serving our unhoused residents by providing them with supportive services, not just in Lowell, but across the region. And then finally, as Jenny mentioned, we have funding to conduct a watershed study as part of the Northern Middlesex Stormwater Collaborative. We'll be doing energy planning as part of our Green Communities work. And then, one thing I missed on the transportation projects is that we will be starting our transportation improvement program, doing the work to inform what projects are funded and on our TIP for the next 5 years. And so that process will be starting very soon. In February, we have TIP readiness days, where we'll be looking at projects that are currently on the TIP, including projects in Chelmsford, to make sure that those projects are set to be funded at the appropriate time so that you can get those construction projects completed, and that we're also looking at future projects to make sure that the MPO is funding them and we can make those important infrastructure improvements using federal and state funding, just to make our roadways better, not just for drivers, but for pedestrians, cyclists, and people riding public transit. And so with that, I'll pass it back to Jenny for a conclusion.
Thanks, Kelly. And one thing that Kelly noted was the At Home in Greater Lowell project. We had a couple of summits in the past year. Some of you participated in those, and we really appreciate that. I believe we have a time coming up on your agenda, perhaps in February, I believe. So where we will be specifically discussing that project in more deeply and getting your feedback on some of the things that we're considering as part of the regional housing strategy. Just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. So we're really glad to see you tonight. I'm always glad to make this annual update, and also happy to answer your questions and also get a sense of if there was something I missed, because we do a lot of things at Nim Cog, to mention any of those things, or if there's something that we're missing in general and we need to add to our things that we're working on either now or in the future. I would love to hear any feedback like that as well. So thank you very much for the time.
Okay, anybody on the board have questions for Jenny or Kelly?
I had a question about, I'm over here.
Okay.
You had mentioned that you're hiring an environmental person? Energy, who's going to be working within the Nim Cog communities and outside. Is that because of the need spread, or like, why aren't they dedicated to the Nim Cog communities?
Yeah, for now, that came from a project from the town of Pepperell and was led by the town of Pepperell, and in working with 3 other communities that they typically work with. They also then pursued a state grant and received it and chose to hire Nim Cog to provide those regional energy management services. So it's kind of a unique situation. Ideally, I would love to have a regional energy manager for the entire region, and perhaps that's what it will segue into after we're done or completing that work. But that'll be a conversation with, the area communities and figure out whether or not that, is the right recipe for, serving our communities, or perhaps some handful of them, and not just Dunstable and Pepperell are the 2 communities, just to be clear.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Pat, did you have a question? No. Okay. Okay. Paul, anything you wanted to add?
No, the date for the at-home presentation is Monday, February 10th.
February 10th.
So they'll be in, and then I guess we'll schedule the open space plan presentation somewhere around that time.
I think it's, yeah,
The open space is on 27th.
January 27th.
Right, but I think, isn't there a final presentation of that plan for the open space when it's done, Evan? Or
That's
is it
when
just
it
the
is.
hearing?
I think that is,
This Thursday is the
Right.
final.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And then they'll come to the board.
Okay.
Right, that's what I'm saying. For them to come back to the board, we'll have to schedule that for around that same time.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you for coming.
You're very
All
welcome.
good stuff.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
We're all set for the Tequilas public hearing. The
Okay.
council's
Okay.
online, and applicants here in the room. It was just a mix-up on the Zoom connection.
Okay. All right, so if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about it.
How we doing? My name is Eric Brambilla, and I have my attorney, Nicholas Felici.
Good evening, Nick. You can turn your mic on. You'll be all set to hear you. You unmute.
Excuse me, members of the board, good evening. This is Attorney Nicholas Felici representing the applicant, La Union Incorporated. And with me tonight is the president and owner of the corporation and restaurant, Eric Brambilla. I apologize, I'm not with you in person, only because I'm rehabilitating from some foot surgery that's kept me confined to the house for the last month. So with that, I apologize for not being with you. I'm always eager to be at these meetings live when La Union issues are before the board.
Okay, so do you want to tell us a little bit about what it is you're coming before us for this evening?
Sure. Mr. Brambilla has owned the Tequilas Restaurant on One Vinyl Square for many years now. I'm sure members of the board are familiar with it. It's a Mexican family restaurant that he has owned for the last several years, along with the 2 other restaurants in the area. The manager of record has been his partner, Luis Arceo. And simply the reason for the change of manager petition is that Luis is relocating. He has family in Mexico, and he's been basically spending a good amount of his time in Mexico and not being able to devote his full time to managing the restaurant as of the beginning of the year.
So we didn't want to go into the new year with any kind of an absentee manager scenario. So Eric is going to take over full-time managerial duties. He's been basically a manager, ad hoc manager for several months, and for the last several years, he's been in daily activity at the restaurant in Chelmsford. So at this point in time, it just simply makes sense to have a formal change of manager so that we have a nice continuity now that Luis is no longer in the area. So that's basically all we're looking at. Eric has many years of restaurant managing experience. As I said, he owns 2 sister restaurants in Groton and in Wakefield, and he has managers that are managing those restaurants. So he'll have all the time that he needs to devote to managing the Chelmsford restaurant, rather than simply, be there as technically an assistant manager, as he has been for the last couple of years. So that's really all the petition is about, is simply to get the managerial change properly instituted now that Mr. Arceo is no longer at the premises regularly.
Okay, thank you. Does any board member have any questions for this applicant?
No.
I just have one note on the current license. It shows occupancy of 98, but on the application for the change, it shows 100. I know it's only 2, but
I'm not even sure which one is it. It could be the 98.
okay.
Yeah, there's no change.
The license is, the existing license, Pat,
Yeah.
says seating/occupancy, excuse me. And where you're seeing the 100 says capacity. Is that
Right.
why it's different?
Well, I would think the seating capacity would be more than the,
Capacity should be more than seating occupancy.
but,
That's correct. Usually on these applications, a lot of times the capacity is a few numbers more than the seating capacity is a few numbers less than occupancy, because the way that the board works, there might be a few extra occupancy numbers, but not seating numbers technically. But I think all we're doing is keeping the status quo. There's no change at all in what the occupancy or seating capacity would be, like if there was an alteration of the premises.
okay, because on a department review sheet, under existing use of premises where it says capacity 100, it notes seating capacity
Passed it.
of the restaurant. So, so it's going to stay the way that it is?
Everything's staying the same.
Okay,
Everything's staying the same.
all right, so we'll figure that out at some point, but, okay, any other questions from the board? Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody here that has any, would like to make any comments for or against this? Anybody on Zoom, Paul? Okay, apparently not, so I'll take a motion.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. We'll take a roll call vote. Pat?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
George?
We're not done
Aaron?
yet.
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, 5-0. Okay, now we'll take another motion.
I will make a motion to approve the amendment on the all alcoholic beverages restaurant license for La Union Incorporated DBA Tequilas at 1 Vinyl Square, Unit 6, as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Pat?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
And I'm aye, 5-0. Okay. All right, you're all set.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, members of the board.
Okay, thank you. Good luck.
Good evening.
Okay, now we'll go back to reports and presentations, and Chris LaValle from the Planning Board is going to tell us about the zoning update.
Good evening. So tonight, I'm going to be presenting the draft of the proposed zoning bylaw change for ADUs. My understanding is that you'll be voting on it on the 27th meeting. What I'm presenting tonight is a draft based on discussions that we've had in our meetings and work session with the town council. Our public hearing and our voting, the public hearing is going to be Wednesday night. Hopefully voting on it on Wednesday, if not at our next meeting. Given our strategy and approach to the zoning at this time, we're not expecting any major changes coming out of that hearing. However, that being said, if there are any changes, we can certainly reach out to you with the final voting and any of the changes that we happen to have from that hearing before your final vote next meeting. So first wanted to start off with some highlights and high-level view of what the Massachusetts ADU law is. It was signed into law August 6th, and it does take effect February 2nd. So it doesn't give us a whole lot of time for enacting any of our own bylaws. The state still has not released final guidance from the housing office for how to implement this. So we're going based on their draft regulations and some of the presentations that they've given communities. We're expecting that there won't be any major changes to that, but if there are, we do anticipate needing to update our bylaws potentially after those are released. But we wanted to move forward with some basic changes to get us into compliance before the February 2nd deadline. So that state law, as of February 2nd, will apply to any municipalities in the state, either with ADU zoning or without ADU zoning already in place. Our current limited accessory apartment bylaw will be essentially ineffective as of that date, which is why we wanted to keep moving forward with this. So the theory behind the state law is essentially the same as the MBTA law, to increase housing stock and hopefully bring housing prices down. So their hope with this law is that the housing stock growth will be between $8,000 to $10,000 or 8 to 10,000 new ADU units in the next 5 years. And the key part of the state law is that the ADUs become a protected use under the Dover Amendment, similar to the educational and religious institutions. So that means that it must be allowed by right in any zones where single-family dwellings are allowed, and in Chelmsford, they're allowed in any of the residential zones we have. So the next slide shows some of the key points. So as I mentioned, this definition of an ADU is added to the Dover Amendment protected uses, which essentially limits special permit discretion of our boards. It allows attached and detached ADUs by right in any zoning district where single-family dwelling units are allowed. They can be accessory to any single-family or multifamily dwelling. So a two-family, a three-family, multifamily can have one of these protected ADUs on it. It limits the restrictions and the process that we have over the ADUs, and it essentially restricts any restrictions that we can place on it to ones that we would normally place on single-family dwellings or other accessory buildings in single-family areas. We cannot create limits on owner occupancy, age restriction, or affordability. And it limits parking restrictions. We cannot require any more than one on-street or off-street parking space for any ADU. And for any ADUs within 0.5 miles of a transit station, which I'll get to in a minute, we cannot require any off-street parking. Based on the definition of a transit station that they have in the state, it's any MBTA, regional or local ferry, subway, train, bus station, stop, and or route. And on the route, if flagging is allowed anywhere along the route, that whole route is considered a transit station. So what that means in terms of Chelmsford is because the LRTA comes through Chelmsford and it does allow flagging along its routes, it's about 55% of Chelmsford is within the 0.5 miles of the transit stations. It does allow us to restrict short-term rentals, which is less than 31 days per state definition. And it only allows one protected ADU per lot by right. A second protected ADU may be allowed by special permit, but we are not implementing that at this time. So our planning board strategy and approach for this has been to ensure that the Chelmsford bylaw is compliant and enforceable, that we're providing clear standards and process for residents and town staff, but we're only doing it to the minimum at this point. What we want to do is make sure that we're in compliance first, see how things play out, see how the final guidelines come out, and then if the town wants to take further steps, we can maybe come up with a town-wide committee to study it further, to see what the impacts might be with different approaches, and then take it a step further and be a little bit less restrictive in the future if we want to. But essentially, we are doing the minimum at this point to comply because we don't want that February 2nd deadline to come unexpectedly. So the final draft of the regulations is expected early February, likely after that February 2nd deadline. So this initial bylaw is really to comply with those regulations. And then down the road, if we want to change it, we can. So to highlight key provisions of the proposed bylaw, only protected ADUs as the state has defined them will be allowed. We're not allowing a second protected ADU. The maximum size is what we're going with the state definition, which is 900 square feet gross floor area, or 50% of the principal dwelling, whichever is smaller. We are requiring one off-street parking space for those that we can, but no parking requirement for ADUs within that half mile. We are prohibiting short-term rentals. We are prohibiting new curb cuts, and the ADUs that are built must use existing driveway and walkway that are there now. We're implementing the same design standards as the prior limited accessory bylaw for entryways and stairs for attached ADUs. And for detached ADUs, we're following the bylaws that we have in place now for accessory accessory buildings on the property, where you cannot locate them within the front yard area, and they cannot be in excess of 20 feet or 2 stories. So it's the same as we have for detached structures. So for the review and approval process for ADUs on single and 2-family, it will be a plan review by the building commissioner. For ADUs on multifamily with 3 or more units, it'll be a minor site plan review by the planning board. All setback and other dimensional requirements that we have currently will still apply. And it mirrors our process that we have now for zoning relief. For any pre-existing non-conforming situations that go through the ZBA. The difference is that for this, no special permits or variances may be required by the boards, even though it does go through that same process. So it'll be a very similar process as what we ended up doing for 150 North Road, for the daycare there, where we still had the hearing, we still had the process, but we were limited in what we could and could not approve. And then if non-conforming, we still have the provision in there to have the ADU not be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure. Other issues and concerns that are being brought up that we wanted to make sure that were addressed, sewer and septic. We aren't putting those into the bylaw, but we have spoken to DPW, and the current regulations that they have in place will mostly remain unchanged, but they will be revised to allow detached ADUs connections to sewer. The current regulations currently allow an increase in up to 500 gallons per day for residential. And based on Title V calculations, the sewer increases for ADUs will be under that amount. So that shouldn't be a problem. And then any design connection issues will be essentially best standard practice. So this is a quick comparison table of how our current bylaw matches up with the ADU bylaw. There is a difference in the maximum square footage. Occupied by relative and principal dwelling owner occupied are no longer applicable for the ADUs in place. So proposed timeline of next steps. So as I mentioned, we have our public hearing on Wednesday. FinCom presentation will be on January 9th. The select board vote, I believe, is going to be on the 27th. If we have to have a second night of public hearing, it'll be on the 22nd, prior to your next meeting. So we'll definitely have some information to share before that. And then our special town meeting will be on the 27th. And as I mentioned, if there are any revisions that need to happen, we'll manage those after the February date. So
Okay.
that's the presentation.
Okay,
Any
thank you.
questions?
Any questions for Chris?
Can I ask a question? Hi,
Yeah.
Chris. So the ZBA process, it's just a simple majority vote. They don't issue a permit. They don't need a special permit. They don't need a variance.
No, simple majority. And they'll be pretty restricted as to what they'll be deciding upon.
Okay.
That's in keeping with a lot of the state initiatives on housing.
But there's
So
no
To go down
piece
to a
of-
majority vote, no more supermajorities.
Yeah,
Whether
it's not even a
MBTA
permit.
zoning or other issues,
No,
yeah.
that's exactly what happened with the North Road project that we had before us at the planning board. Normally, it would have been a special permit,
Yeah.
but because it's protected under the Dover use, it's just a simple majority
It's just
vote.
a vote. It just goes. They don't need a piece of paper. Okay.
Yep.
And what's the plan with the sewer? Are they supposed to tie into the sewer themselves, or are they supposed to tie into the main property? Well, are there?
My understanding, and Evan
there on
can clarify, but my understanding is that how it will happen will be dependent on the characteristics of the property and the design itself. So if it's attached versus detached, how far away the detached unit is from the single main dwelling. It'll also vary depending on the elevations. So it will be essentially an engineering decision.
But there's no state guidelines on that, and we don't have any
As of now, no.
purview or any guidelines around that. No. Okay. Can I just ask one more question? So the Dover Amendment, sorry, George, do you mind if I ask one more? I'm just curious, because typically the Dover Amendment is for, religious and educational institutions and natural resources, I think I've heard. I'm curious what the terminology they're using, or is it just a straight?
It's just,
Or
they
what?
added this to one of the protected uses of the Dover Amendment. So it's childcare, nonprofit religious institutions and educational facilities, and now ADUs,
Okay,
as defined in the state definition.
okay. Thanks.
George?
That 900 feet, I guess, like, say there's a mill building on the road, right along the roads, which would, that's still limited to one unit, or could you put, 8 or 10 of them in
So under the state law, only one of these protected ADUs is allowed by right.
Right.
Towns can allow more by special permit. At this time, we have decided not to take that route, that if the town wants to allow that in the future, that's a future discussion. But right now, we're really limiting ourselves to only what we need to comply.
Okay, thank you.
Virginia, anything?
Yeah, Chris, you mentioned the bus route is considered an entire station, so it's within half a mile. Has the planning board or town staff given any thought to how are you going to monitor the bus routes if the bus routes start to change and then we have to change the bylaw to catch up with that? Because the bus routes are not under our control.
Right. We haven't really thought of how that's going to happen yet. We don't have the final determination as to how a lot of this will play out in the state regulations. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. It's likely that we'll have to, as the project comes forward, there may be a case where last year that property was not within the half mile, but the bus routes changed, and then that property would be within, and so we would have to change our guidelines for that,
So
change
the
the
bylaw actually
recommendation.
wouldn't have to change. We would
Correct.
just have to track the bylaw to the bus routes.
Yeah. And it would likely be something that we would be tracking within the project proposal.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Pat, any questions? Okay.
No.
Okay, thanks. All right, I don't have any either, so thanks very much for coming in and reviewing that, and we'll be looking forward to it in
Thank you.
3 weeks. All right, next up is related to that. We have the warrant for the special town meeting on January 27th.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. As was noted tonight, and we discussed at your last meeting, before you this evening is a warrant for the special town meeting to be held on Monday, January 27th at 7:30 at the Senior Center. The warrant is a single article warrant addressing these amendments to the town zoning bylaws regarding accessory dwelling units. The warrant has been reviewed by town council as to its legal form, and therefore, if you approve it this evening, it'll be presented to the clerk's office, to the town constable, and posted in a timely manner. And as was noted in the presentation this evening, the Finance Committee is scheduled to hold its public hearing and meeting on it this Thursday evening. And then the planning board will make its recommendation to town meeting, and then prior to the town meeting, the select board, you'll make your recommendation. And so again, it's a one-article town meeting for the 27th of this month.
Any questions? No. Okay, we'll take a motion.
It's a motion to approve.
To sign it.
To sign the warrant. I'll make a motion to sign the warrant for the January 27th, 2025 special town meeting as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, Pat?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're to the MMA proposed resolutions. As you know, later this month, the MMA is having their annual meeting, and they have brought forward these resolutions that will be discussed during the annual meeting at that conference. So we can do them one at a time, or we can take them all at once, or we can talk about them a little bit. I mean,
What are we doing?
We
We have to vote to approve somebody to vote in
Yes.
favor or against?
correct, yeah,
Okay.
that's what we're doing.
And there's no editing these right now?
That's
They're just,
correct.
they are what they are?
They are what they are, yep. I mean, you can suggest at the meeting, you can suggest edits. but-
Amendments.
Yep. The first one being addressing PFAS contamination, remediation, and to protect the public health. They're all kind of lengthy. I don't want to read all of each of them. but basically to do whatever we can to address the issue of PFAS, especially in the water supply across the state. So anybody have any comments about it?
No.
All right, do we want to just do them all, look at them all, and then we can,
Pardon?
we want to look at them all, and then we can vote whether to approve them all. I don't think there's going to be much discussion on any of them. The second resolution is a resolution supporting the modernization and efficiency of local government. Has a lot of items that might be of interest, possibly is the two communities. Talks about there's a couple of things that I noted. Legislators should support the reduction of unnecessary and costly publishing requirements. I guess, Paul, that refers to like
Legal
notice
ads, yeah.
Yeah, public notices. I mean, if you look at the Lowell Sun, I mean, that's probably where they make a lot of their money still right now. There's so many of those. But nobody reads them in the Lowell Sun, I don't think, anymore. It does also address establishing an OPEB commission, which we spoke about when our legislative delegation was here.
So on the publishing requirements, they could still have a notice requirement.
Oh, there
but
will
you
be a
could-
notice
You
requirement.
could put it on your website instead of in the
Right.
paper.
Correct.
Yep.
I have a question, Paul, on the second page. The first bullet under in the area of municipal procurement and spending efficiencies. What is I don't understand what the cap is that they're talking about.
Right, the cap for many years has been $50,000, where you have to get
No,
three.
what is it a cap for?
Oh, procurement, for procurement of goods and services. So, for example, if we wanted to go buy a computer system that was
You
valued.
don't have to go through a formal procurement.
Right, if it's under $50,000, you'd get three quotes.
Okay.
And what happened, as noted in the bullet, the previous legislative session, not the one that just ended, but prior to that, they amended it for schools to $100,000, but they didn't do it for general government, so no one quite understood why. So the MMA is saying, well, why don't we just go back to it always being a traditional uniform requirement? So therefore, any good or service up to, the proposal would be up to $100,000, could be done without a formal RFP and advertising process. It would just be done by soliciting and recording and maintaining records of three quotes.
Thank you.
Okay, the third one has to do with supporting local, state, federal partnership toward a robust multimodal transportation system across the Commonwealth and supports thriving communities in the age of climate change. Any questions, concerns, comments about this one?
No.
One thing I noticed on this one, the MMA supports.
Where are you, Pat?
I'm at the bottom of the second page, the second to last bullet. It has nothing to do with congestion pricing, but to have a more equitable tax for the users of the roads and the highways. Right now, it's just a gas tax, but vehicles that don't use gas don't contribute to that. So I think it would be good to come up with some way, as noted in here, at least that's how I read it, to, I guess, charge by miles driven rather than gas used. Although maybe there should be some hybrid thing of that. I think a vehicle that's much heavier than my car should pay more than I have to.
Particularly an electric car that are heavier because of the batteries. And they don't pay
Exactly,
anything.
right. So anyway, that was one of interest to me. And then it also notes, supports a local option from municipalities to utilize automated enforcement technology to reduce traffic violations. There's been talk about that for a long time, to have cameras, for.
And they just passed the law 2 weeks ago at the end of the session to allow it for school bus
Right.
the
Again,
flashing
yeah.
violations. So what's happening when is the governor signed it is the town with the approval of the school committee, so it's not going to come here, could allow for the installation of cameras on school buses. So when they stop and the flashing lights and the sign goes out that says stop, camera would be activated and then it would photograph those vehicles that would violate the non-stop, which is a safety concern for children, and then those would be presented to the police chief, who would then be the issuing authority for citations. And it would just be a penalty. It would not be anything beyond that, because they don't know who the driver of the vehicle is or any of that other information. So this is the first time that the state has ever allowed that type of video enforcement, because although many other states allow red light cameras and speed radar enforcement by camera, Massachusetts does not. So this is sort of going to the broader issue. And obviously, this was prepared before they knew what the legislature was going to do with the school bus safety concern.
So it came up at the state, and they nixed
Right.
it again.
Yeah, for
It's
years,
still
they've been asking for red light cameras, which I think it exists in a couple dozen other states, to avoid, again, a safety consideration.
And then the last resolution is one that they propose every year. It's a resolution supporting an enduring fiscal partnership between cities and towns and the Commonwealth for fiscal 2026 and beyond. It does mention several times about the restrictions of Proposition 2.5, so I don't know if anything will ever change with that, but it does mention that about the reliance on the property tax by communities, which we have mentioned many times recently in these meetings. So any other comments or anything on that?
No.
All right, if not, we can take a motion.
So the motion is to authorize someone, yourself, to vote in favor of these
I think so.
resolutions? Okay. I will make a motion to approve the chair of the select board to vote in favor of these proposed resolutions as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, so we'll do a roll call vote. Pat?
Aye.
George? Erin?
Aye.
And Virginia?
Aye.
And I'm aye. Okay, thank you. All right, we're to town manager reports.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, a few items this evening. The first one is an agenda item that'll appear in your next agenda on the 27th. This has to do with the fact that the town, through the chair, has received an updated project site approval application for Crosby Village at 39 North Road and Crosby Lane. The Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities has allowed the town till the end of the month to provide its comments on the latest revisions to the plan. They are available for viewing on our website. Obviously, if somebody wants to go to the link for this meeting, they'll see the plan design changes. This has been circulated to department heads, so the proposal is that your next meeting on the 27th, this will come before you. There will be a period for to receive the comments from the board, as well as for public to have their input to the board's comment process on this project once again. Okay. The next item I have is, today was the deadline for citizen petition warrant articles. As of the deadline today at 4 p.m., there were no citizen petition warrant articles submitted for the spring annual town meeting. So the only thing we really have is the carryover from Mary Donovan's one from the Pet Cemetery from the fall, and I will place that on the warrant. I think that was the understanding for the fall. So beyond that, there are no citizen petition warrant articles for Springtown meeting. And then just a few grant awards since our last meeting. The first one is from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection under the Recycling Dividends Program for the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program. The town has received a grant award of $18,000 to promote recycling in the Commonwealth. And again, this is an annual grant award. The second one is a Maya Grant Award for risk management. This one's sort of kind of timely. This is a grant award in the amount of $9,000 approximately, and this is for the Department of Public Works to purchase and operate a thermal imaging camera to identify hidden and remote areas vulnerable to Arctic air intrusions. So basically, we'll have somebody in Public Works be licensed, because it is a drone and skilled in operating this equipment. But basically, you could do in situations that we're in now, is they can go up and around the buildings and the roofs and the sides, and with the thermal imaging, see where there are exposures to prevent freeze-ups, because that is a major loss control for municipal buildings, is obviously when the freezes thaw, and then the water spills and then flows in, and whether it's on a holiday weekend or other time. So again, this will help us to avoid, because even in modern buildings, in fact, even more common in modern buildings, despite the energy codes and all the efficiencies, it's still subject to human, error or issues. And so what this will do is it'll allow us to monitor the buildings to prevent any losses. Because again, that's not only the loss of damage of property, it's also the tremendous inconvenience that it would place if you lost part of a school area or even another departmental work area, library or otherwise. The next one is from the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments. You heard it earlier this evening from the presentation from our Nim Cog leadership. Nim Cog has been awarded a $70,500 grant under the Healy Driscoll Administration's Water Quality Protection Grant to conduct a watershed study, to basically to perform a stormwater asset inventory and collaborative mapping, to address key infrastructure vulnerabilities. And then the final, next to final one is, we did receive notice through the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee that the Mass Save is approving their Community First Partnership Grant, which will provide $85,000 per year for up to 3 years to support energy efficiency awareness programs, including the funding for hire an energy advocate that will service the communities of Chelmsford and Billerica. So once that paperwork comes in, we'll move with it and get that program underway. Again, it's part of the ongoing efforts of the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee to enhance energy efficiencies and protect the environment. So that's the last grant award. And then the final thing I have under my agenda this evening is sort of a long-standing item, and it's actually one of the Select Board and Manager's goals for the current year. Over the last several weeks, I've been working with Town Council, KP Law's Rick Holland, to advance efforts with Verizon to extend the underground utility project through Central Square, basically from the current area that was performed at the Town Common over a decade ago to the Adams Library. And what this basically means is you'd suppress the utility lines that are primarily Verizon and National Grid, although Comcast has a cable line through there, but there are a few private lines. But basically, it's suppressing the utility lines underneath the center. The challenge there has always been the brook that goes to the center, as well as the Verizon trunk lines that go through the center out towards Bedford. And then you also have to make the individual service connections once you suppress the lines to the individual business establishments on either side of the roadway. The project duration, basically Verizon went out, met with our town engineer, and examined the situation with today's technology and today's ability, and they estimated it would probably take about 24 months to complete this project. What's been the holdup for this project since the first phase is the funding source. The project is funded, or has been funded, through utility surcharge. So there was a 2% surcharge on utility electric bills throughout the community, which funded the first phase of the project and also adequately has funds for the second phase. In fact, that surcharge was suspended about a decade ago because of the amount of funding, because even with today's technology, everybody still receives, electrical service from National Grid. The challenge has been on the telephone and the Verizon side, and the reason for that is the statute has provided and continues to read that it should be funded from a surcharge on land telephone lines. You can imagine with the advent of and popularity now of the wireless communications and cell phones, there are fewer and fewer residents in the community who maintain landlines. In fact, the collections were roughly, going back a decade ago, less than $75,000 per year. Verizon estimates, a rough estimate, again, without getting into it, but about $1.5 million for them to suppress the lines. And you've got to keep the projects are put in separate trenches and they're funded separately. So there's a trench down there through the center that would be installed, but you can't use Verizon's money for National Grid's work, and you can't use National Grid's money for Verizon's work. And similarly, Comcast will pay its share for its work. And again, this all happened. We lived it and saw it and did it near the common area. The issue has been for a decade is that Verizon refused to proceed without a more immediate funding source. And their preference would be to have the money up front. And the town's position is that, you know, they did the first phase and actually went a little bit in arrears. And it took almost 3 years for them to collect additional surcharge to pay off the cost of that first phase. But what was upsetting to the town is they suspended the surcharge, and that's where things ground to a halt. And yet, our position, particularly in the recent talks, is, well, one, we never got notice of that suspension, although we realized it occurred. But also, if you ended the suspension, how are you going to collect the money up front to ever do this? And I think in their mind is back then, the cost was even greater than the current estimate, and there was just no feasible way that they thought this could be collecting ample money. So basically, we've got Verizon back to the table. National Grid will be easy to get back to the table, but the issue remains the funding source. I was able to, with Evan's assistance, we were able to look at the Community Preservation Fund, and we found 3 instances in Massachusetts through the Community Preservation Fund, which has only been around since the 90s, where communities have used community preservation funds to suppress utility lines. And the key here, as was the case of Hingham that was most recent, is it's in a historic district. So that's the connect, and that's the gateway. That if the town wishes to do it, you could fund this Verizon's cost through the Community Preservation Fund, and that basically requires a vote of the Community Preservation Committee and the vote of town meeting. Both of those have to occur. If the Community Preservation Committee doesn't want to do it, they can't get to town meeting, and if town meeting doesn't want to do it, then it doesn't happen. What I would ask and suggest in my discussions with Council and Verizon is we should utilize both funding sources, meaning put back the 2% surcharge, the little money that it collects, because in the master plan, there are issues beyond the center that go to this. The original envisionment of this underground utility project went down Chelmsford Street, towards basically towards the town office building, towards Fletcher Street, and then there was also a portion that went down Borica Road slightly, almost basically to the intersection of Summer Street. Again, not get ahead of ourselves. The immediate issue would be through the center, because that's really what everyone talks about and we've been struggling with for a decade. And we've looked at various options. Well, could you move it above ground by way of Summer Street? That's prohibitively expensive. Could you even put it like behind the buildings? You'd have to get private property permission. That's still expensive. From Verizon's perspective, this does nothing for Verizon. In other words, it doesn't bring in any revenue for Verizon, doesn't bring in any customers to Verizon, doesn't bring in anything. So they kind of look at this as a requirement, not a opportunity or an eagerness to fulfill it. So basically what I'm reporting to you and basically looking for your guidance is it's time to either do it or drop it forever. In other words, if the community wishes to do it, which this seems to have been strong support and favorable response from the Common Project, and we keep hearing about this, when are they going to do the center? Then the way to go would be community preservation, then town meeting. Then once that vote occurs, we would then sit with them, proceed with the design work. As you can imagine, it'll probably take about a year for design, coordination, and then the construction thereafter. And yes, like we saw at the Common and like anything else, it will be disruptive during construction because you're burying lines in the street. And even this past year, we saw National Grid doing gas work in the center, and that was disruptive. So we're mindful of that. But this is it. I don't know of any other means of which to do this, and I guess what I'm looking for you is guidance to me. do you suggest that I bring this forward? I'll put my name on the warrant, article in the warrant, but I don't want to do this and then say, well, the select board said, we don't think that's a good idea. I mean, FinCom has their right to their recommendation, but I know this is a shared goal and a longstanding goal that goes back literally decades. This project was envisioned in the 90s, and again, we're in the late 2000s, we were able to get the first phase by the Common. Again, we've been forestalled now by over a decade. And this is the best, and I think the only route that town council and I have come up with if the community wants to advance this project. Because we just don't see a viable way of saying to Verizon, well, hey, you're on the hook, and if it takes you 48 years to get your money, it's just not going to happen. So I guess I welcome your thoughts. The only time sensitivity to this is obviously we'd have to have this on the warrant that you'll sign next month. So I guess I just welcome your thoughts on whether this is, and again, the community will ultimately decide if that's what they want to use. The beauty of this one is it wouldn't increase the tax levy because community preservation, there are funds already available that are undesignated, and also if there were a borrowing, it would be paid off out of future community preservation funds, but it would not increase the tax levy. Had the town just sought to fund this from the tax levy as part of capital, then it would have supplanted other capital projects, and I don't think would be welcome, particularly in today's difficult financial climate.
I guess I don't see a downside to asking CPC how they feel about it and bringing it to town meeting. I don't know how anybody else feels about it.
Well, questions?
I have questions.
Yes. Yes,
So,
Matt.
So, before going to CPC, I assume we'd have to put some budgets together and things like along that nature?
Well, again, Verizon did a rough estimate of 1.5 million. I'm suggesting we ask for 2 million, just because we know that you'll hit conditions that you don't see, and then anything that doesn't get expended can't be expended for anything else. So if need be, we'd come back later and rescind the unexpended monies like we do with other projects. But there just isn't the ability, because here's the problem. To get Verizon to come up with a more detailed cost estimate is going to require a use of their resources and time. And I just don't see them willing to undertake a significant use of either if the town doesn't have a demonstrated funding source going forward. So we can commit it, but we won't actually, do that. But in other words, if we come in and say town meeting votes $2 million, and then Verizon spends X number of dollars to do the design, and they come back and say, no, this is really going to be $3.4 million, then obviously we stop, but Verizon's going to be compensated for their design work for this project, even if their cost estimate is inaccurate. I just don't see any other viable means to proceed with it at this time.
Okay, so what about National Grid? Are they funded? Do they have a pocket of money?
Yes, but National Grid, I believe we have about $3.5 million of National Grid monies, which will more than offset their cost for the project, which is why
they believe in their current estimation that 3.5 million will cover their costs.
Yes.
Okay, so the utility companies do all the work here, so they would do all of the excavation, the laying of the cables. They would remove cabling, remove telephone poles, repair sidewalks where they enter into commercial entities and such. I assume that the utilities would cover all of that.
What the utilities will most likely contract for the work, Pat. They'll do some of the engineering work in-house, but they'll we saw in the first project, they'll contract with the third-party vendor to do the excavation, but then they'll lay the cables and work. What the private property owner owns is anything it's just like what you get with an electric meter. Anything that goes on their property and inside, the private property owner owns. So they'll bring it to the edge of their right-of-way into the property, but then a property owner would entail some costs if, in other words, if they've got to put a conduit or a connection in their private business. So let's say the hotel in the center had a connection that was going from above the street. they would be responsible for any work that goes on their building and their property, and that would go through the entire center. So whether it's, any property within the center is responsible for anything that's on their side of the meter.
Sure. So, so in this instance, then our contractors the town contracts with contractors would be with National Grid and Verizon.
Right.
And potentially Comcast or anybody else that needs access to these.
So what we would do is we would have probably our town engineer attend the coordination meetings. But basically, we're not running the operation because we don't have the expertise or the ability to direct anybody, right? I mean, it's in the town right away, but they're the ones who are going to lay the cable and so forth. So we'll be part of that coordination project in terms of, logistically details and so forth. But they are going to control the installation of the underground utilities.
So in your estimation at this point, would we go to CPC without a budget and then come back and fill in the blanks along the way? Or is that how we have to get it off the ground? Because it sounds like we can't necessarily put a complete budget together until the design work is done, but the design work doesn't happen until we fund it.
Exactly. And so that's why I think we go in, and just like I report this evening, I'd report to the Community Preservation Committee that Verizon's rough, approximation is 1.5 million. We'll ask for $2 million appropriation. Obviously, anything that's unused would go back. Anything that exceeds the 1.5, we would regularly report to the Community Preservation Committee what's taking place out there, what the overruns or issues or adjustments are. Otherwise, it's going to be a multi-layer step where we could come in and ask for, a smaller amount to do the design work. But then the problem with that is, it would take longer, and then you don't want to run the risk of doing the design and then not getting the approval for the full project, because then you're never going to do it.
Now, having heard you said that, I would think it's in the town's best interest to place a firm commitment to proceed and complete this project as we've wanted to do for several decades. Thank you.
Erin?
So what's the, so Verizon is saying 1.5 million. Has National Grid told you what their estimated cost is? I mean,
No.
we have 3.5, so it's more
Yeah.
than enough, but I'm
And
curious what their.
I don't have their revised number, but the constraint has always been Verizon because the nature of the trunk lines that go through the center. If you go out there, the bulk of the lines out there are telephone lines because it was trunk lines that go through the center towards Billerica. The electrical line is just your typical phase service.
But the poles are National Grids.
Yeah, but they're going to take the poles down and just bury them. Yeah.
They can use them again.
Actually, Verizon actually owns the poles. Verizon actually owns the poles in Chelmsford. Yeah.
Oh, I thought National Grid owned the poles.
No.
Oh, Verizon owns the poles.
Yeah, National Grid's always the
that
lead
changes
because
my
they're always first on the.
Oh, because they're just first on the poles, but they don't own the poles. Oh, I always thought they owned the poles.
So, like I said, I don't foresee any issue with National Grid.
But I also feel like they're kind of doing the same. Like, I feel like this is something where National Grid is going to tell you it's like $2 million for them, and Verizon's going to, or $1.5 million.
They have to document it.
And
I
then
mean,
Verizon's going to
right.
say it's $1.5 million for us, and they're going to go down there, and they're literally going to dig trenches right next to each other and do the same job. It just seems like,
But that's why it's done through coordination, but it's
Yeah,
bid.
so they do
It's bid, and they have to, because it involves public monies, there will be formal bid documents, there'll be formal requisitions and pay.
So is Verizon's
records.
$1.5 million estimation, their estimation of their contribution to the project
It's
with National
not
Grid
their
together,
con-
or what it would be to just do it themselves?
It's do it
like
themselves.
alone?
You can't commingle. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying there isn't coordination, but you
Yeah.
can't commingle. So that's for their cost of the project.
Yeah.
They estimate. And like I said, it's upfront design work for Verizon, and then it's for their physical lines to be buried, and moved through the center. Now, obviously, there's going to be some shared costs, right? If you've got an
Yes,
excavator out there and
that's
you're digging
my-
up the
yeah.
road, and those we experienced this in the first phase.
Well, even the design cost, I mean,
Right.
you're essentially
Well,
just.
you're designing different utilities. So it is going to be different for what Verizon needs to do and what National Grid needs to do. But we did see in the initial phase of the project around the common is that, there was a commonality and they've
Yeah.
shared those costs equally. So there is gamesmanship there. And in fact, it's just not allowed. And they have people who audit their books because they're utilities as well on that, so that's.
But
how
in
it'll go.
phase one, they did kind of do some,
Oh, yeah.
there were some shared costs.
yeah.
So that figure might actually be lower.
No, this
than-
is their estimate based on the fact that it's a
Based on the
joint
shared
project.
costs.
It's a joint project with National Grid, so it's not just, oh, this is our total cost, we're out there with nothing else existing. This
Gotcha.
is their estimate based on the fact that they know that National Grid is also
Will
going
share
to be.
some of those
will be
costs.
out there in the center, yeah.
Okay.
Virginia, anything?
No, I agree this has been around for a long time, and we should, with the Community Preservation Committee concurrence, I think we should take it to town meeting. My only other thought, Paul, would be to maybe just give a courtesy heads up or communication to the Historic District Commission,
Okay.
since
I think they would be
it would
supportive.
no, I
Yeah,
I think
exactly,
it
yeah.
would benefit
Yeah.
them, and they
Yeah.
would be supportive, and
Yeah.
it might also help with
Right.
CPC and town meeting.
Thank you. A good suggestion, thank you.
George? Any-
No, I agree with that, and I think that would be good, because they'd be, trying to get it passed as well.
Okay.
Okay.
You gotta, who's gonna pay all the detail work there?
That's all paid through these, those numbers are baked into these estimates.
Yep.
And so they'll get paid through the utilities, and then, they'll pay the town for the work. Like I said, the beauty of this, at this time, is we did do a phase a decade ago around the common, and it worked. Everybody got paid, everything was done cleanly. In fact, we were fortunate, it came through a winter almost like we had right now, where there wasn't heavy snowfall, so they pretty much worked the entire winter that time. So that's the only thing that can slog up the process is your wintertime conditions.
And everybody liked the way it turned out.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. All right, so we'll give it a shot, so, thank you. So
okay, thanks.
that concludes my report this evening.
Okay, we're to liaison reports. Pat, do you have anything?
I do. First of all, Happy New Year to everybody. Secondly, just want to say that North Fire is proceeding along, and the siding redo should be complete in the next few weeks. Of course, at no cost to the town. And one other item I wanted to express, that the first school building committee meeting will be held Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock at the Chelmsford Public Schools Central Admin Building. Public is welcome to come. This is our first meeting in regards to the Colonel Moses Parker Middle School project that we're about to embark on. So this will be dealing with the feasibility study. And Paul, is that live or just recorded?
That meeting will be, I believe it'll be live, yeah. See
Okay.
at the school.
All right, so you can tune in to Chelmsford Telemedia to see that and kind of start to gauge what we're going to be talking about and some of the various options that we need to look at. So it all begins Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock, and it'll be broadcast on Chelmsford Telemedia and held at Chelmsford Public Schools Central Admin, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. George? Okay, Sharon? Virginia?
So in addition to the open space recreation plan efforts that were mentioned during the public service announcements and Nim Cog's presentation, the Conservation Commission was represented today at a meeting of the Metro West Conservation Alliance, which is hosted by the Sudbury Valley Trustees. And the group is working to develop a regional action plan for land conservation and land management. So they just wanted the public to be aware that they're involved with that alliance. And from the North Chelmsford Water District, they are continuing to do the service line inventory inspections so that they can get compliance from the Mass DEP as being, having no lead status. And so with that, they're going to be collecting water service box GPS data to gather evidence that the district has no lead service lines. Their operators will be driving in red trucks. They'll be wearing high visibility vests, And the district will notify affected customers in advance once the list has been finalized, so that they'll know what's going on, and the customers will not be charged for the service. And then my last liaison comment is whether or not we need to put something on another agenda regard to the public comment policy. So we approved that in the EV, and they need to get put into our policy document, since we did that at the end of last year. But the policy that's there now had previously been sent out to all the boards, committees, commissions with a request that they take formal votes to adopt it. And I think we tweaked it a little to take out the select board specific language. So my comment is it would probably be appropriate to take the policy we just reviewed, take out the select board specific language and things like complaints being directed to the chair for the town manager and stuff like that, and then reissue it to the boards and committees and commissions. One, so that they're aware, because I think it's a stronger policy now, but also if we want them to readopt that instead of the old one that we just took out.
Okay, so Paul, you haven't sent that to the other committees
No.
yet? Okay.
No.
Yeah, it'd have probably be in February, because our next.
Well, that's fine. I just don't want to forget that everybody else is operating off the old policy.
Yeah, well, I thought Paul had said he was going to send it at some point, so.
It
but
it would
we can wait.
require, I don't know if it requires us to vote on modifying it again, or just, if we just do it.
I think-
Take
yeah, we
out
can
the
probably
select
just
board
do it, 'cause I don't think it's
specific
that much in it.
Yeah,
We
okay.
can just do that. Okay, we can do that.
That's the only reason I brought it up as an agenda.
Okay, thanks. I just have a couple things. It being the new year, the library has the new one book for this year. It's going to be Master, Slave, Husband, Wife by Il-Yan Wu, about a couple that escapes slavery or tries to escape slavery for freedom during the time of the Civil War. Copies of the book should be available soon at the library. And also, I found out this afternoon that Neshoba will be having their budget breakfast for local officials on Friday, January 31st at 9:30 a.m. So if anybody can make that, that would be good. And that is all I have, so we'll take a motion.
I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of reviewing executive session minutes from October 7th, 2024, Segment 1, October 7th, 2024, Segment 2, November 4th, 2024, and December 9th, 2024, and for the review of previously held executive session minutes for potential release from June 6, 2022, Segment 1, July 11th, 2022, Segment 1, and September 9th, 2024, Segment 1, not to return.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Pat?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Erin?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned.
Pat, I'll email you the link.
Thank you, Paul.